Welcome to the show today. Today I have Guido Greber with me, and he's the co-founder and CTO of LIVE Technologies. Now, we're going to dive right into your story. We had a chance to exchange a couple of weeks ago. I'm really excited about today's conversation, and about today's topic, and about your story. So let's dive right in. So Guido, tell us a little bit about who you are and what's your background, what's your story especially that got you to where we are today.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Danny, for having me here and to speak a little bit about. So, yeah, my story. How long do you have time? I think not that much, huh?
Let's stick with 5 to 10 minutes.
So let's do the elevator pitch. So, actually, traditional Swiss started with business administration after an apprenticeship in automotive at Mercedes-Benz Schweiz. Then actually figured out, hey, I worked there and figured out, it was in the late 90s, figured out IT is coming. That time was still called EDV. Jumped into it and then decided to move on and start in another company as IT support and then start on and on and on. Made some education stuff into IT. At the end, I even studied business informatics at the University of Applied Science here. And also working all for Swiss companies, but then I had a very huge project for Swiss bank, and I figured out, hey, corporate lifestyle is not mine. So I decided really to do something totally different. So at that time, I also was for the university. I was a guinea pig to going to China for them. So because before I was working for a company which has a lot of Asia business, they asked me, would you be so kind to be the guinea pig for us? I said, okay. Why not? I decided very quickly, moved over for 6 months. There was not that much to study. It was more learning Chinese at the end. Coming back, worked for the bank. And then the bank more or less, there was a project international. And at the end, it was in outsourcing. And then I was approached by a Chinese guy and said, would you not like to join my company in China, a Chinese startup? I said, look at it all my career. I have my planning where I want to go. Really like the Swiss way, not going for the strange stuff. And what really happens, like I said, I had no girlfriend. I was really pissed of corporate, and I said I'd do it. And I said, well, how much can you pay? I said €300 a month plus the house, an apartment. I said, okay, deal done. So I moved over. It was great. So I haven't seen the offices. I haven't spoken about my role at all. I just was like, I think it was 27, and you know how it is. You just do it. I arrived. Let's say the office. It was second-tier city in Tianjin. It's the border city of Beijing, but also around 15 million people living there. So I started in an office with around 4 to 5 people, some cockroaches around, and a very nice environment. But actually, it was also supported by the government, but local government. So we really quickly actually developed the business from 5 people to over 100 people in less than a year. I was responsible for the whole international strategy. So they sent me to all the outsourcing conferences in New York and London. I was a little bit the face of China for outsourcing with some other. It's very funny. There was another guy in China who was also the face there for outsourcing. So 2 Swiss guys in China doing propaganda for China outsourcing, which was very strange. So we fight the Indians. It's a very, very strange story of that. So, but after the time we had some conflict, which can happen, and at that time I also started some startups. So I started up with a friend. He asked me to join his Tianjin expats to make it more professional. I joined them. We had the idea about business networking, so we started to creating it was at the end one of the largest, still it's going, one of the largest networking events in Northern China. We had around 20 Chamber of Commerces joining us and other business council and groups. And every month around 150, 250 people joining in. And then also I had with friend, we created a record label for techno music. So we created techno events a little bit. We educated like people in night lifestyle. So it was a lot of phones. And I figured out, hey, I'm doing this not bad. I'm getting successful. I have a good network of it. So then there was also another company, a German, now Swiss company, asked me if I can do their sales and marketing, business development for North China. And I said yes. So I joined them, but it was in logistics, nothing with my past. So I joined logistics and came to sales and marketing from the IT. I didn't think about digital, so we come later to that. And then I did this for 2 years, but I figured out, as I said before, my stuff is getting really successful. Why I'm not doing my own and get my own money and live my own life? So I created my own company in 2010 in Hong Kong. And in the same year, I also created a second company in Tianjin for myself. And what we actually did in Hong Kong was more international consulting and also helping sourcing for Swiss companies. And the other one was local branding. And now we had a really big bang. In 3 months after founding in China, I got asked in a hotel bar with a beer through my network if I could do the sponsoring and marketing of the 2011 Real Madrid China tour. So sport is not my field. I'm more rugby and other things. But I said, okay, let's do it. I did it. So, and we did it. We delivered. And from there on, my company more or less was born. And we tried different ways, you know how it is when you do something. So, nevertheless, and then the company still lives. My old business partner is running the company. And then I had to come back because when my son was born, I decided pollution, education, family-wise, my wife and I decided we go back to Switzerland. So I hear cultural clash, bigger than to go to China, because it's slower, it's different. You don't have to fight so hard. You have to fight different and less direct than you do in China. So it's like, I would say it's even everybody would say it's difficult to do business in China. For me, it was easier. Then I started here, helped other companies to also go to China markets, so market entrance, but more on project and execution level than only on talking. I did this, and then on the way, I met my now other co-founder of LIVE. It was around 2013, 2014. And actually, what we did then, we discussed about our vision, and that's actually my story. So my story is quite diverse, quite not Swiss. It was for the first 10 years quite Swiss, and then I let it go. And I need to say it's one of the best things, but it's of course you have to do leverage what you're doing better, and it takes 3 to 4 minutes to explain.
I love this. I love this for the reason because like every time I interview somebody on the show, I never expect it in that sense, but it always does open my horizon completely. And I think it opens everybody's horizons that is watching it. I mean, like a Swiss growing up in a traditional Swiss environment, going to China, and then building stuff up in China and dealing in China. It's just not the average story, and that's what I love about this conversation. Just up until now. So very, very great story. Now, I'm curious about this because, and maybe we will go into this a bit later as well. But just to make a hook here in terms of China, because I know that China is a black box for most people, and when I'm Swiss too, right? So you're Swiss too. And when I look at Switzerland and China in terms of how things are done and communication and everything, I mean, it's like black and white to me. So why do you think you were able to get over there, and for you it was even easier to do business than it is in Switzerland for you? Like, why do you think that is? Were you Chinese in a previous life, or?
Maybe. Good question, actually. I think in the beginning I had all my schedule and I tried to follow my schedule, which is in China possible. And I think the main point we have here in mind is like we still think back on the Chinese in the old time. Of course, they have the history. Not everything they have done was great, and it's great. So we can fight about the ethical stuff there. But the growth China went through and the changes and the effort and how they do it, because they missed the whole industry lifetime of 50, 60 years, which they missed. So, and I think we're still very afraid of what we don't know. I think that's it's something people have. If I don't know, I'm afraid. And if I have been there and I see it, I'm impressed, especially and you have also to deal with two kind of people that are going for expatriates, high salaries, drivers, nice house, and they live in expat life. or you have people that go local, and I went quite local. So for the first year, I even didn't speak to really a lot of Swiss, and only at the end, I actually opened up a little bit. Yeah, but of course, a huge international community, but more. And I think that's a huge difference. And for me to adapt on that, I don't know really. It's like maybe it was in me all the time. But it's just for me, I wouldn't say it's easy to do business. I had also like a lot of sleepless nights and everything, and thinking how I'm not getting blacklisted, how to pay the taxes, how to get my taxes stuff out. So all these administrative things, which I could deal somehow, but not on the very end, because sometimes we have to be really Chinese to be Chinese. Like you have to be Swiss to be Swiss. So there's small dots we don't, but that's the cultural thing. And I got the interest for that. And when you open up and just let it happen, I think that helps. And that's what I did. I just opened up. I went really local. I had a lot of local friends. And that made the change, I would say.
Now, this is really interesting. Maybe let's stay on this topic for a couple of minutes. Because you mentioned a couple of really interesting things, like opening up to the culture and you know, going local, so to say. Along the way with doing business in China and building stuff over there, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced? Maybe if you compare it to Switzerland, or maybe if you compare it to your mindset or upbringing and things like that.
HR, definitely. But even founding the company, because I made a decision to found what's called foreign partnership enterprise, which was a totally new model in China at that time. Every foreign lawyer said, "Don't do it. There's no no regulation." I said, "Yeah, but that's maybe interesting. So let's do it." I wouldn't do it again, to be also now enough. But it's like the learnings, you know. You just try it out. So what we then, it's and to found a company in China, it takes time. I didn't know that you first have to have an office, which is furniture inspected, before you even go for registration, because you need to show a rent contract. And good thing for us, we had several clients. But as well, I mean, you have signed contracts, and in the beginning, you don't get your own Fabiaos. Fabiao is like an invoicing system in China. So yeah, every time I had to bill a client, I had to go to the tax authorities to get my invoice. And believe it or not, the first 6 months, they didn't accept my contract. So actually, they spoke into my contracts with my clients that you have to change this part, you have to do this part. And so I went to my clients are big SMEs or big hotel chains. So I have to go back, and change an existing contract where I went all the process through from the beginning. So that's maybe the difference. We always say, we hear in the Chinese meetings, that, yeah, when we do a contract, it's done. In China, it starts a negotiation. I think you heard this as well sometimes. It was, and after 6 months, I was so pissed. I was so like, in Swiss, I would rumpelstilzchen in the tax authorities. So I was screaming until I got my own invoice machine. It was solved. But then I think that's some of to create the company and then to get the business running, it takes time. But I think it's in every country the same. It's maybe registration is quicker, but you face other issues, other regulations, or the cultural stuff, because it's easy when you know somebody. When you don't know, same in Switzerland. I wouldn't say even.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of points that I pick out there is accepting the culture and being patient, really making an effort to understand how things work, going local, and I think once again patience is really a big one.
And the language, and the other thing is like there's a saying in English, it's DIC. Have you heard this?
DIC? I don't think so.
If something happened to you in China, you just say DIC, means this is China. So you're not going to questioning it. You just say this is China. It's like sometimes you have to, but in most time, if you start questioning yourself, or why this is now like this, you're going to be crazy. So better just accept it, or even if somebody say you have an appointment in Switzerland, you're at time. If you're important in China, you're late, or if you if actually you have a meeting, you leave for the meeting. So you're calling, hey, I'm arrived shortly, means maybe half an hour, 1 hour later.
Wow, that's a difference.
it's not general, so it's two different kinds. So we have to make sure we're not putting everybody in the same pot. It's like, I think it's regional as well, because China is a huge region. So in every region has, or the south is really like more relaxed, and the north it's the same.
Yeah, so this is great. Thanks for diving in and sharing these, I think, golden nuggets for doing business in China. A couple of really interesting points to learn from. So I want to transition into the now and talk a little bit more about what's most exciting right now. So now you're working very heavily with LIVE Technologies as a CTO. So what's most exciting right now?
Yeah, actually, what's going on? It's like when you start in this industry. LIVE, maybe I have to say what's LIVE. It's like a technology which enables large communities to control the communities and to monetize the social reach which they have in the existing channels. And actually, it's not fighting them, so it's coexists with the other social medias. So when we started, we founded the company 2015, and not 2015. We had only a concept, and we had a lot of talks with a lot of local Swiss clubs, football clubs and ice hockey clubs. We did some workshops with some fans for the hooligans. So we met different kind of people, and I was able to deep dive in the sports business as a not sports guy. So for me, the business behind the football was amazing. When I saw this Real Madrid stuff, if you see what's going behind, it's like, and I got not an option with another Spanish club, which I cannot say now here, but was also quite interesting. So you see a lot of things in the back which happening. And so we started, and then from the creation of the company, we got some first people in, and we started speaking to really global brands, global football clubs. And we realized that we have to leave Switzerland very soon, because here, because of the sponsoring situation and large corporates, I'm not going to name names here sometimes, because they are in the structures, and you have clubs that have over 400 partners, business partners. And if you go in as a new partner, which leverage the fan engagement and fan experience, you're going to die, or you're going to burn out of money before you have something in place. And that we realized, and then we went to UK and even international, and now we speak to really interesting brands. We have two very great lighthouse projects. One is on the market now, second is coming soon. So and it's like, yeah, that's the problem. It's like, because it's public, if between you and me, and we have an idea, I could tell more, but it's like it's exciting which fields we go, and that we decide when we start, we're not going for an MVP or we're going small. We say, hey, you know what, we build it, because if you really would build, if you have the contract, it would take 12 to 18 months, and you would maybe kill the business. So we decided out of the workshops to create something and go really deep and create a platform, which actually, it's an open platform, which actually enables clubs also to do existing ERPs and functions they already have to integrate in our platform. So not closed everything, so it's open, but it's very Swiss way, and also on the Swiss way. And this whole journey about creation the product, I think that one of the best things, I would say, I have to speak also for my co-founder, is like we were able to leverage all our old contacts and networks. So, I mean, I had several years of outsourcing or new markets. I had a degree in software engineering. Even I never coded actually, but I understand what the guys are doing, and I know how to get it. So this journey behind to get to this goal, and where we are now with the first clients, which we got earlier this year, seeing what's going on in the UK and London with them, that's amazing. And if you see what one of the clients now has, these kind of clients, which you see on their website. So if you go to Google me, you see it. So I'm not going to tell and make commercials here. It's amazing, and I think that what makes sense, to wake up every morning and just do it and just deliver. And of course, you never know where you are. You know, it's like you have to. I'm at the moment also at the interim a little bit as Chief Operation Officer, so I have a temporary position, and the CTO and operation. It's like it doesn't.
So you're wearing quite a few hats now. This is really interesting, and like one topic I wanna dive into, which you mentioned a couple of times, and also when we chatted last time, where you talked about very passionately, is this topic of outsourcing.
Yeah.
And I want to quickly talk about this because I know there's a lot of people struggling with this, because like, how do you select the right partner? How do you work with a company that is not, you know, locally here? How do you work with those people? How do you treat those people? Do you treat them separately? Do you treat them as part of your organization? How do you deal with them? You know, what kind of model do you use that works best for you? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, because you worked in outsourcing before. You have a lot of experience there, and now you have a really interesting setup that allows you to be very lean and move very, very fast. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Okay. What's I think if you start, you have to first think where should they be? What do you want to reach with them? So what we really did, it's like closed down us in a basement for 3 months and really writing the business requirements. I think several pages deeply with all the user stories, even the interfaces between each feature. So and even the security stuff. So we broke it so down that the stupidest people on the world could understand it. And with flowcharts, but not complex flowcharts, very simple flowcharts. And then with this, we started to define the technologies, tech stack. And here we had a long discussion about your native or hybrid on the smartphone side. Took us very long, to be also honest, on these discussions. And then once we had all this figured, we started looking around who could help us and how they could help us. I know I didn't want to go for India or China. Even in China, I mean, mobile-wise and technology, they are far ahead from everybody. And everybody who fights this can call me anytime. But I have something in around which it's close. I can fly over very quickly. They speak even English. I made sure that everybody in the team, even the first person, speaks English. So not only the project manager or Scrum Master, everybody. And good English, not only just a little bit, hey, how, and so. And I really treated them as a team. So when we had the milestone, we went out, we went for drinks. I mean, it's very important you can celebrate as well, not only push them to the limits. And but I think they became some kind of a family. And another way to achieve this was actually, you can go for at cost. So you pay by hour, but have fun with your budget. It's going to kill it. You can fix price, but then we're going to sneak out stuff. And I had the interesting stuff, the counterpart, the commercial manager on the other side proposed me an idea, and I loved it. It's like a dedicated team. So I have a team there which we pay monthly or according to what we need, but I decide actually what's the daily business, and I see it everything in our sprints, and that's one of the great things. And so if you have problems with if we cannot do it, you speak about it, you go over. I was trying to be once a month there and just sit with them 1 day or maybe 2 days sometimes. Went with the key people. I went even out for dinner, invite. It's really the socializing it. And the family thing. If you get them a family, it depends also on the country and culture as well. But I think that's my advantage because of China and my cultural awareness. So I interact easily with other people than I would even say I may be easier now with other people than with Swiss people.
That's really interesting because there's a couple of really interesting things you mentioned in terms of outsourcing. You mentioned family, you mentioned socializing, you mentioned really being part of the company. And having a dedicated team. I think all of these go in the same direction, because sometimes when we look at outsourcing or nearshoring or whatever you want to call it, we look at this as more like abdication instead of delegation. We're just like handling this to them so they can take care of it and you don't need to think about it. Or you're trying to control every single aspect of it. And I think both of them are horrible ways of doing things. You're micromanaging, like you wouldn't really want to do with your own team. So I think just this mentality change of saying, well, you know, when we engage with a partner like this, really it is a partner. It's not a company that sends us an invoice and with it there's a code that comes, but it's really part of the company. The team is part of the company. And I love this idea of this dedicated team, because you've built quite a sizable team now in this outsourcing model. Mm-hmm. And I think that has so much value if you can have really a dedicated team that is not spread all over the place, but it's working for your cause, for your company, and then it can really be part of the team, part of the company. And the communication, and then flying over there 2 or 3 hours maximum. And these are all really interesting requirements that I hear many times. And also in Europe, the cultures are I think easier to communicate with than even US or Canada or China especially, right? Or anywhere. So some really interesting pointers there.
Yeah, and it's also I have seen a lot of, I went in large outsourcing projects, large corporates. It's always saving money, and but at the end, it's somebody has to do something with a budget he gets from his boss. And I know you can speak openly here. I think it's the watermelon effect. I've heard it. If in a team, it's actually red. You have to escalate. You escalate to the manager. Next level, it's a little bit not less red, and then it arrives at the CEO level, which actually should make the decision. It's green. For me, that's the watermelon effect. So, and that's in corporate. And I don't mean it's corporate bad, but it's like we have to change. And most projects are failing because of bad communication or egos. And if you let the egos go and think about, and I'm also I'm also old school from my age of what I learned in organization and the management. But what's coming up with Agile and even with the Agile development, for me, it was the first time I did a project coding with Agile, but it was more successful. And at the moment, I'm really a huge fan of that. And I think it has always it has to be a way between both old and new. Even as I with business, when I help other business to go to Asia or another market, say, to go digital, but keep the traditional way as well. Combine, take the best of both worlds. So
this is great. One more thing about outsourcing. So you, as the CTO, you're in charge of this, obviously, and you want to do things in a way that allows you to stay sane. So how do you work with the outsourcing partner? You mentioned a couple of things. You go over there every once in a while to spend some time there, meet people. But do you know every single coder, every single developer personally? Do you mostly just communicate with the project lead, or do you just like really treat them as they're just your people, and you want to make sure that you know everybody? And how do you go about this?
I know everybody. I want to know everybody, and even I know their wives' names, because even one housewarming. But no, it's even if they have problems, because I want to know when they have a problem and when their mind is not at their job. And sometimes it's now we work 2 years together, and sometimes you see something goes not well, so then let them just go home, or let them get another thing, or just helping them, And so every time I'm actually coming in, before I go to the meeting room, I walk by and give everybody a handshake, speak for 2 or 3 seconds with them, say how are you, what you're doing, and then what I'm also integrated in before when I leave normally at an hour, like an open hour. So if they have idea for the products or conflicts or something they want to speak, so they just come in, propose. I'm not going to take every idea or every change or request, but I'm listening. There's some good stuff coming out or some good feedback. And even they have also these debriefings after I went ago, and they share it with me. So I know exactly what's going on. And I think this allows me to control on a smart way.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Like I had a couple of conversations over the past couple of weeks in terms of management practices in the digital age, and it was always sort of going in the same direction. New employment models, new management practices. Less hierarchical, less like dictatorship, and it's kind of like interesting because there's sort of like the 2 phases I see. Companies are applying that now internally, right? And they understand, okay, there needs to be a change. At least most of them, I think, really understand now that there needs to be a change, and it's really it's getting adapted, and things are changing. And I think phase 2 is the external stakeholders as well, because yes, there's the internal stakeholders, so to say, which is the employees, right? And then there's the external stakeholders that is maybe the next step or the next phase in thinking, because saying, well, maybe they're not that different, the internal and external stakeholders, in how we should manage, how we should treat, how we should lead those kinds of relationships, because maybe it's less of a formal organizational structure that we should look at a company today, and more almost like an organical ecosystem or something like that, with all the stakeholders really matter.
But it's easy said. It's like, for me, it's always from the head, from the management, from down. So, it's very fun. When I started working with Mercedes, but it wasn't Mercedes, it was Maybach, like the retail company, or then Sieber Hegner. So it's all companies which are, and now DKSH, but in the beginning, it's all patronage-owned companies. So it's like, I think if you have the head standing and management by example, that's a word I love, actually. You treat people as you'd like to get treated back. And so it's not right for each business. And so it's like digital. Everybody want to be digital, but what's digital really? It's an optimization of process. What is digital? And there's all these management learnings I do. But I also, what I also recognize is, like, if you be an expert, you're old school, because expert is something I did good in the past. It doesn't mean it's good tomorrow. So it's a little bit critical now about this. I would never call me as an expert for China or whatever, because I did it and I had a great success on that. But tomorrow, business is different. It's changing. I haven't been there for 6 months now. So how do we do this? So, and it's really, it's top down. So the management has to change the own, if it's privately owned, the owner, of course, and he has to go down. And it's really hard to control. Watermelon back.
It is absolutely. And you know what you just shared before, basically saying, well, not the expert on this, even though I did it. It really goes along with your personality of always learning, testing these things, seeing where things are going, and not saying, yes, I know this, I don't need to learn anything. There's a saying that goes like, if you're the smartest person in the room, go find a new room. And I think that's a smart way of saying it.
Yes. It's also regarding the personality. It's like, failing, you learn by failing. So a large historical legacy company, if they do failures, it's huge impact. So they cannot do much more failures. So that it's a high risk for them on the naming. So what do you really do? I can do it, because if I do a failure, I get up the next day and do something different. More or less sometimes. Maybe it takes 2 days. But, to be honest, list of failures may be even same long as successes, or even if it's longer. But every failure brings me next step, and every decision, there's no right and wrong decision. It's just a decision. And at the moment it's right, maybe tomorrow it's wrong. So very Chinese. That's why some people call me Confucius now. No, it's really like this. So it depends. You have to reach the situation. You have to analyze the situation.
Absolutely. Now this is great. That was a very, very engaging and energetic conversation. So thank you so much for being on the show. Last question is, where can people learn more about LIVE? Where can LIVE Technologies, where can learn people more about you, connect with you? What are some of the best places for that?
Easier. You find me quite easily on LinkedIn, Twitter. But Twitter, I'm old school. I'm more using the Chinese WeChat. That's easy to connect. Even on my website, there's live website. It's live-mobile-marketing.com, but it's more or less a teaser. We're launching a new website next year, Q1. But that's the easiest way to contact me. If you're in Zurich, I most likely walk around somewhere. I'm hiding most of the events, to be honest, as well. So you don't see me too much on startups event, network event. I did this when I came back first to get cultural shock back in. But I stopped this, so I'm selecting quite where I'm going and where I spend my time.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So perfect. Thank you so much. We're going to link to these sources below the video so people can check it out. They can check out your work. They can check out you and connect wherever they see fit. Perfect. So thank you so much for being in the show.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, and have a wonderful day.